ladies. Oh, let's try again. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and mandrakes to that 6+++ show. I am your host, Tom. I'm back again to talk all things 40k. Today we are going to be running an eye over 10th edition to decide what we think about the game of 40k. We've now been playing for quite a few months. As ever, I'm joined by a whole bunch of the 6++ team here to natter and offer their opinions with me. We're going to be talking a little bit about what we've been up to. We're going to talk about all the exciting things coming out on the 6++ channel as well. And then we've actually got a very spicy bunch of podcast questions. I think the sort of Discord were very riled up by the 10th edition review idea and got stuck in with some questions of their own. So we'll field those towards the end. So I'll introduce you to our cast of players, do a little bit of a hobby roundup first, and then we'll go forwards. I will start where I always like to start with my dear leader, Chris. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm very well, very well. How are you, good sir?
I am excellent, thank you. Yes, I'm ticking along just nicely. Having a very nice time. I've not actually done any hobby at all. But I'm taking Drakari to an event this weekend, so I know that I need to fix stuff.
Fixing.
Inevitably, raiders will be broken when I go and look in the box, so I need to fix those. How about yourself? Have you done anything interesting in your 40k or hobby
Thanks for
life?
asking, Tom.
Yeah, no, I know. I knew it was a point of contention because I passed over you last time. Apparently.
You sure did, and everyone needs to know. I have been doing some hobbying.
Okay.
I have been painting some Grey Knights, and I have, in fact, been painting 5 Dread Knights because I'm really original like that. So yeah, I've just I've got 5 Dread Knights on the go. They're at the stage now where, to be honest, they are pretty much usable, but there's so much silver, you kind of want to spice it up a little, get some little touches there, so you don't look like a complete meta chaser. And then once I've done that, it's what else do I want? Do I want to paint another 10 paladins? How many Tetmarines do I need to paint? All the really fun, different types of silver to paint, really. So I'm really excited about that. There's thoughts of maybe a Land Raider Redeemer that's even more silver, or perhaps even Canis Rex, who is also silver.
Big and silver.
I'm big on the silver train at the moment.
Good.
But yeah, that is all I've been doing, just painting Dread Knights as and when I can.
Wonderful. Okay, and when are you next in action? When's the next event for you on the horizon?
Saffron Slam, May the 4th and 5th. So
very cool.
I'll be taking the Grey Knights for their debut. What that list looks like, I haven't decided yet. But yeah, that's in 2-3 weeks, is it? So got a little bit of time.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I'm also joined tonight by the lovely Jack. Jack, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm 2 weeks into a 5-week long play tournament every weekend situation, which I only discovered after the second week, and I looked at my schedule and I was like, hang on a minute, what have I done here?
Yeah, I've been there. I've been where you are.
So,
do you feel good about that?
this last weekend I played Kingdom Gaming. I was able to come second, went 3-0, but not quite.
Oh, very nice.
For a first place score.
Yep.
But that was pretty solid. So
just gonna see how you
with
go.
That, and they got me a free ticket. Yeah, got me a free ticket to Savage Hammer GT. So I'm gonna go to that as well.
Fantastic stuff.
But yeah, and then I've been sort of trugging along with more Tau lists. New Tau lists.
And that's the new book. Yeah, you've been practicing the new book a lot, haven't you? So how are you getting on with that at the moment?
I've won a game now, which is better than I was last time you asked me.
Yeah, fantastic. That's good.
But yeah, it's getting there. It's I kind of wish I had a few more detachments to play with, but that's the life that we lead. So
yeah, absolutely. Maybe that's something that we can touch on when we start assessing the edition. I'm also joined tonight by the lovely Rob. Rob, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. Good evening.
And do you have any hobby or gaming in your locker, Rob? What have you been up to?
I finished my Howling Banshees finally. Just need a coat of varnish and a bit of basic material put on. So I think Scorpions are next on the line to build them up and start them.
Full melee aspect does seem to be the way to play Eldar this edition, so I think that'll be really good.
I just want aspect warriors. I don't care if they're good. I'm going to build a full aspect army, and I'm going to run it in RTT, and I'm going to go 1-2, and it's going to be great fun.
I think Dan Bates had run an all aspect army that was all right, where it was like all the Phoenix Lords with all of their
he did it for the team's event at the weekend.
Yeah, so it can be done. It's not terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was at an RTT on Saturday as well.
yes.
Lethal Dice, great little event. Went 2-1. Got to the top table and got to play Aaron on his Custodes.
Yes, that's one I know well. The old Aaron in the final situation. It's always a good time. How is that for you?
Well, it was great to start with because we were playing Purge the Foe, Drukhari and Custodes on Purge the Foe. That's always a great matchup. It was great fun. We just talked the entire game. I think we spent 2 hours of our time on the first 2 turns, and we'd killed 3 units maybe between us. It's great. It was great fun. I think turn 1, I had 5 mandrakes, failed to kill 4 sisters, which denied. I think it was 11-point swing there. And then it was chasing, but it was great fun, great little
nice, event. Awesome. No, really cool, and obviously well done to Aaron. Where we had a whole bunch of people in action this weekend. So obviously well done, Jack. I know that Lee and Jamie East also took podiums at the Saffron Slam charity event, which is very good. Which means that they took it too seriously, boys. So they need to try better next time. And so, good little haul. And obviously, Scrivo was away at the Home Nations and had a great time captaining for a bunch of Wales hopefuls there. And I had a lovely message actually from Innes Wilson this week. And Innes said that John is a credit to Wales and to 6++. So that's quite high praise. Nice. Quite high praise from Innes. Innes, not just the persona he sometimes puts on the screen. Don't worry. He can be nice, can be lovely. Right, okay, let's shout out some people in the chat and then we'll go into the police roundup because we are very good at self-promotion, possibly the best. We have Gordon Chung in the chat. He says, hey team, hi Gordon. Existence UK says, good evening gents, why is Ed not here to be heckled? You'll have to heckle him another week. He's not here this time. Phil Gill says, evening all, anyone going to Oxford this weekend or all going to Hellstorm? We're taking quite a contingent to Hellstorm this time. And Sharuni says, oh boy, an interesting topic today. Yeah, I hope so. That's the idea. That's the hope. I think the plan is for this to be interesting. I'm very much looking forward to hearing you in the chat's thoughts on 10th edition. So do fire away as we go. And if you do have any questions about it you want answered, don't hesitate to bung them in the chat as well. Noga Matthew's also here. Welcome, Noga Matthew. Very good to have you here. So we will take it to a self-promotion-y place very briefly and then move on. But Chris, what's new on the 6++ channel?
Oh, all the good stuff. But first, as always, get rid of that full screen. Hit that like button. Okay, get us out into the wonderful YouTube algorithm. Maybe leave a comment. Maybe if you
please do that.
If you realize, if you look at the data, by far more people who watch our stuff are not subscribed than are actually subscribed. So, don't be a sheep. Don't follow along with everyone. Be that hipster. Subscribe. Okay. But other than that, we have, we're firing out all the content at the moment, really. So we have obviously got more of the cracking the codex. So we've got this time Scrivo and Ed talked about Carrion and went their way through that. I can't remember if we mentioned it last time, but Tom, you had your Goonhammer Drukhari Return of the Archon.
Yes, yeah.
Which has gone down a treat. And then this has been a big one. This one has gone down really, really well. Tom, you interviewed Liam VSL, who plays for some teams like Team Ignite.
He's a bit good. He's a bit good as
Rumour has he's quite good. He won some tournament, LGT.
Yeah, LGT. And then Coventry back-to-back, I think.
Yeah, he's all right.
And then he won the Alpine singles as well with all the best scary players in the world. With Eldar, who apparently aren't as good now. So, he disagrees.
I can imagine. So Tom therefore interviewed him about Thousand Suns.
Yes, he does love Thousand Suns as well, to be fair.
If you are at all interested in Thousand Suns, then that is the show to watch. And then we've also got Davey, who interviewed Ben, who went 5-1 at Adepticon with Vanguard Onslaught for Tyranids. So if you are, again, any sort of Tyranid player...
Spore Assist in there, yeah.
All the good stuff. So definitely check that out if you're Tyranid-minded. Tom has made the jump into the world of shorts. So check that out. He's got one of his so far about people you come up against at an event, and the other one's going to drop tomorrow. And then we also had a really, really important Dark Angels FAQ that just changes everything. So make sure you check that out to find out the lowdown. That's in our shorts section. And then we haven't actually done any live stuff for a week, so that is madness, I know.
But here we are now, so it's
But
all
here
good.
we are now. And yeah, as always, if you enjoy our content, please do consider becoming a member, because you get lots of wonderful things like early access. And now we're getting more and more members. We are starting to produce more regular members only content. So definitely keep an eye on that. You should see where last few weeks we've been really upping the ante in terms of scheduling and video ideas and all that sort of thing. Like, I know lots of people often say these sorts of things about their channels, but genuinely over the next month or two, you're going to see a much bigger increase in just kind of the quantity of videos, regularity, the wealth of options that we have. And inevitably, some of those will probably end up going more towards the members side of things. And we've already got members requesting specific things for videos as well. So definitely consider becoming a member. And if you're looking to buy some Warhammer stuff, then consider checking out Composite Games, who is in our description below, and you can get some moolah off. And if you use the code PLUS, we get a little bit of that money too. And we are actually currently in discussions with another up and coming shop up north, who've got lots of very big exciting plans, and we're going to be working with them in the not too distant future. So yeah, all the good stuff.
Very much so. Wonderful. Okay, a few more shout outs and then we will move it towards our topic for the evening. Welcome, Pickalax. Welcome. Another one. So, Entropic Tyranny is my favourite named member of the chat, as you will all know. But Nepotism with a whole bunch of M's is also very good. That's an excellent, excellent name. I'm a big fan of that. And Nepotism thinks that Dark Angels have been saved. And Existence UK is very excited for the Emperor's Children Index. I too am excited, and I immediately ran to go and secure the services of Lee Churchwood to take you all through that and tell you what it means and where it's going to fit in the world. So Lee, obviously, Emperor's Children Lifer will be making some content with us on that index as soon as we have it in our eyes. We probably won't have it in our hands because it's probably going to go out online. Okay, wonderful. Right, we're going to move it to 10th edition. Yay or nay? I kind of felt like we've been playing the game quite a while. It's actually been in a relatively settled state for quite a while now. It's not just in the Wild West at the start. So just before this next round of balance and next round of books, it felt like a good time to just run the rule over how we felt about 10th edition, what we think the positives are, what we think some of the challenges and negatives are. Be interesting to hear from you, the listener, about your opinion on this as well, because this is all useful data gathering, right? It's very interesting to get a sense of how representative, how we might be feeling about the game is. Obviously, it's us, so we want to do this in a positive and constructive way, because that's how we like to live our lives. So
that's why Ed's not here.
That's exactly why Ed's not here. Yeah, exactly. Wrecking ball that he is. And we are going to start with all the positive. Chris is a teacher. Chris will know. Whenever you're dealing with something that needs desperately to be improved, you start by saying what is already good about it. That is a very important rule of teaching, because that gets their attention, gets them on side, and then you can point out
smack them down.
all of the ways that they've gone wrong. But they're already on your side, so it's easier at that point. So we're going to start with the A's, and then we're going to dive into some nays. And I'm just going to rotate and let the various different guys kind of chat through theirs, and we'll bounce ideas off each other. We haven't checked what the other ones have, so we're going to be stepping all over each other's toes. Welcome, Clever Invective. Very nice to have you here. I do like that top hat in your picture. So I'm going to start with Jack. I'm going to get a yay off of Jack. Jack, what is a yay about 10th edition in your experience of playing it so far?
So, as I've been exploring the Genestealer cults by New Army, I've been looking around, and I decided to go back and just look at what the data sheets were in 9th edition, because I was curious to see, like, what did they do before and, like, how stuff changed. I was just interested.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone's gone back and looked at any 9th edition data sheets recently, but if you compare them to the data cards that we use now, reading them just gives me a headache. There's just so much text, and it is laid out in such a horrific manner that I think I didn't appreciate before. I mean, it's fine for us, right? Because we spend a lot of time looking at these things, but I don't think I really fully appreciated how much that could maybe scare off new people to a certain degree.
Completely.
And it's just like it just doesn't look good. Like, I think once you're in the weeds of it and you're already there, you don't realize. But some of these data sheets are like huge, like so many options, and there's just so much text on there. And it was just, I don't know. The long and short of it is, I think the data cards are laid out in a really nice manner. They're very easy to read. The datasheet abilities all being there are quite nice.
Yeah,
So I like how all that works. It just looks nicer. I think the presentation in general of 10th edition is quite high, which I quite like.
Yeah,
It makes,
I think that's definitely true.
Especially if you need to look something up for your opponent's army very quickly. It's very easy to do that, and when you get to the data sheet, it's very easy to find what you're looking for very fast, which I very much appreciate when I'm playing anyway.
Yeah, completely. And there used to be like a lot of very important like minutiae hidden even in like weapon information and stuff, which was just ridiculous. Whereas obviously there's a lot more by way of easy keywords and consistent rules, and then the weird stuff the unit does is usually in a very obvious place. So I agree, they're much nicer, and I actually really like the data cards, and have the armies I have the data cards for. I really enjoy having them. I don't tend to actually look at them, but it's nice to know that I could if I wanted to.
They've got these absolutely fantastic ones.
Oh,
with the Tau Special Edition. They've got like these
shiny, look
edges.
at that. That's nice.
They're fantastic. I love them.
That's with the Special Edition Codex, is it? Okay, that's cool.
They're fantastic.
I
love them.
That's very, very, very cool. Okay, I'm going to take it to Rob next for a yay point. Rob, hit us with a yay.
Secondary cards.
Okay. You like them?
I love them. They're absolutely brilliant. It may be a bit of from when I started the hobby. Like I started in 8th, and you played the Maelstrom decks then.
Yes, I also did. Yeah,
and so it may be a bit rose-tinted glasses, but I love the dynamicism of. Is that even a word?
Dynamism.
Of the cards. You can't just go out and go, I'm picking 3 secondaries. 2 of them I know I'm going to score 30 points on. And the third one I will probably score it anyway. You have to react. You have to actually think on your feet. You can't just go to every game and have it mapped out how you're going to score your 100 points.
Good. Yeah, and I think they've done a nice job with that, having the CP incentive for playing the secondary cards. And I think the things they ask you to do generally aren't massively unreasonable. I think you have to certainly aim to play a particular way and punch through at a particular point in the game to actually get into all the places on the board you'd want for scoring them, but you definitely can. And yeah, as you say, it is much more dynamic, and it forces engagement between two armies. When both armies are playing tactical, it's good fun because stuff gets drawn into each other's way, and you score a thing, but then you open yourself up for something else. And I also, when I first came in, was playing Maelstrom, and they were happier times. I enjoy cards as well. I think they're good fun. All right, wonderful. Chris, let's have a yay, sir.
Yeah, I would add on to Rob's point that actually started playing in 8th. I hated Maelstrom cards with a burning passion because the amount of games I lost just because bollocks. And actually, I'm converted. I actually do enjoy the cards now. So I had it on my list as well because I actually really do enjoy. I think they've got it right. So what should I go for? Back to the datasheet thing that Jack's mentioned. I actually like the abilities on the datasheet. I think it adds just that kind of character to the units. Obviously, it used to be packaged into the stratagems, didn't it? And that's kind of been removed. We only get like 5 or 6 stratagems now for our detachment. But having all of these units having different abilities, I think is really good. So I think we can. For me, it's just there's a bit of learning, having to learn what those are and that sort of thing. But they're quite similar, aren't they? But I do like the fact that my unit doesn't just have to rely on the stratagems and that sort of thing. When you take up a new army and you're looking through the data sheet, you're like, oh, this does this. That's quite cool, and blah, blah, blah. And you pick up these little things, and sure you do have a tendency to forget the less important ones. I don't think I've ever used my Way Leapers +1 to battle shot tests or whatever leadership checks. I don't think I've ever remembered that. But when I read the data card the next time, I'm like, oh yeah, that's
what does a Way Leaper do?
The Way Leaper has no relevant abilities, so it just never comes up, does it? Really?
It is a standout one. To be fair, he
just has too many rules. The poor guy.
I've been, I do like the data sheet.
Yeah, I think in general it feels like more of the units across most armies have some flavour, and I think actually making all the data sheets have something relevant going on is a big part of that. And as for myself, what do I have in my yay sections? I am actually a big fan of the missions that we have in 10th as compared to 9th. And I'm a fan of this for several different reasons. I think you can feel that they've thought a lot about what produced very predictable patterns of scoring in ninth, because I think ninth was very famous by the end for a sort of primary headlock situation where you could just get someone in a bind they then couldn't get out of for most of the game, in terms of just pulling away on primary lead with missions that scored very regularly. But if you got that sort of first half of the game sorted, you were fine. I think a lot of the missions don't give you that option now. There are some that still do, but not as many do. And I think they've added a wider range of sort of win conditions and scenarios through the missions. Some of them are obviously a bit weird and we don't love all of them. But there's definitely a greater range of situations that you're put in and different demands asked of you. And I think they do, although there's a few where, like, if you're on first turn, you don't feel so good. It seems like that helps with the overall first turn problem, which we have historically had for both the editions before this, and don't seem to be having on anything like the same level at the moment.
I think adding to that, I guess kind of links to your point and my point. Games are generally lower scoring, and to score that 100, against like an equally skilled opponent, you really have to pull something out.
Yeah,
and it makes it so much more interesting, especially when you start to get higher tables in day 2.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's like a mission like Scorched Earth against a good opponent, right? Where it's like actually getting that burn off at some point is really flipping hard. But if you can, it's huge, because it's just points then just not likely to have. And then things like Purge are very, very hard to model for, but again, present just a completely different challenge with where you are on the board and how you play the game. So I really like that. I also quite like Sites of Power with the characters, although that's a bit more situational. But yeah, I just think there's a nice mix, and then you do still have your take and hold in there if you want to just play 9th edition style primary, and that's all very straightforward. Okay, we've got a few comments in the chat. We'll just go to so Shirini thinks the missions are so nice. I completely agree. Nepotism gets a bit sad at Bring It Down homers, but remembers that it could, understandably, and it is worth saying there are a couple of outliers with that. Like Tau definitely do suffer with this. They are one of the rare factions, I guess Knights being the other one, where the fixed plan is just very obvious, and that's a bit painful. But Nepotism also says it could have been the good old days of Treasures of the Ancient Aeons and Ancient Machineries. Yeah, I think we probably don't miss the uneven landscape that was faction secondaries. That was obviously a very crazy place for most of Ninth, very much a haves and have-not situation.
Of course, someone called Nepotism is a Necron player.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And then Uncle Stunker above says, 10th edition, the flow is nice, but I can't help that feeling of emptiness that I'm left with after every game. Like it's a bit flat, is it not?
The feeling of emptiness is not the Warhammer Bud.
Certainly for myself, I know that is absolutely the case. The emptiness is a bunch of other stuff.
It's funny, you guys talk about missions a lot. I could not be further away from your guys' position on the missions and secondary situation in 10th edition. I hate the secondaries. I hate the secondaries so much in 10th edition.
Okay.
I think they suck. I think most of them are really bad. Like they're just not. They're not enjoy. Like I'm looking at you guys saying you like them a lot, right? And we've got Eldar player, Dark Eldar player, GSC and Dark Eldar player, sometimes a few other things. These are all armies that are like really good at secondaries because they have really high mobility, which is fine. And I imagine if it's very easy for you to like score, more than 30 points, 35 to 40 points on secondaries every game, it makes them a lot more enjoyable, right? Again with the Eldari thing, like they don't have to worry about if you drop, you get all your CP, right? So you don't you have to worry about if you go fixed. If you want to go fixed, you can do that, and you don't have to lose out on anything. So that's kind of I think these are like the highest end, right? The best of what you can get. The good side of the secondaries. I think, but for some armies, if you're Votan, if you're Tau, if you're Knights.
I like them when I play Votan.
Fair enough. Orcs in some situations. There's a lot of secondaries that you just struggle to do, right? Because your armies aren't well set up to do them.
Because those armies are good at playing the primary, which is their job, right?
Yeah. Because I think when I think back on ninth missions, I really like the faction-specific ones. I thought they were really flavorful and interesting. There was a Tau one where you had to do an action in the midpoint of each board edge.
Yes.
And in theoretically, you could do them all on turn one, and if you could like game plan around that, and like it was hard, but you could do it, right? And that's interesting to me. Whereas
Typically,
now
I watched how players do that in turn 4 after they'd tabled my entire army. That was usually when they did it. Yeah.
But I like the fluffy ones that we've aerospace transmitters or something, whatever it was called. Nephthys remembers. I really miss stuff like that. I really don't like how I end up with having to play against Bring It Down and Teleport Homers in almost every single game. I think that really sucks. I think we could use a little bit more variation on the the options. Like some of those could be made to be a little bit better. And I'm not talking about making homers worse. I'm making it some of the others like more like a bit better, so you want to play them.
I do think Homer's being the passive one that it is, though, is part of the problem with that, right? Though, like if they weren't getting a 3 for hiding and shooting you, then you'd be all right.
It's
I
the
think
only
that
one
would
you can
tip
run that you can get viable points on. I think is the problem
Yeah.
there. Like if there was another option that people could run and reliably get points, they probably would from time to time. But I don't think there is one right now, because Homers is the only one where you can safely get a 15, whereas all the other ones you can get a 15, but you're normally going to trade a unit each time you do it if you do like behind enemy lines or something like that. Storm Hostile is incredibly unreliable, but there's a lot of missions in there that I just think are really again, they're just like sort of they favor certain armies. Stuff like Engage is like, okay, well, you know, if you're really fast, that's fine. If you're not really fast, then you're just kind of out of luck. Then there's stuff which is just badly written. Area Denial, God, one nightmare. Having to have a discussion every game about how Area Denial works.
Certainly does need it. Yep.
So yeah, I just don't like how the secondary works. I would like if they could just all be redone. I'd be pretty happy. They all wind me up. And then in terms of primary,
I guess we'll see if they do that. Yeah.
Primary,
we'll get a new pack at some point, won't we?
Yeah, I think primary is like mostly fine. I think we could use a bit more variation in the UK scene, because there's like, what was there, like 9 primary missions, and we play 4 of them. It feels like 5.
A few of them are just a bit too weird, or people aren't quite willing to do it at the moment.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like I'm always a big fan of skew stuff, like there being a couple of skew things in the meta to make you think, just to so that one archetype doesn't just run over everything. That's why I like, a lot of people don't like Purge, but I really like Purge being in there because it gives this is that bias, right? Because my army's really good at Purge, right?
That's the bias. You know, we play these super fragile maneuverable things that we can score points, but we get tabled doing so.
But that's kind of the point, which is that
balancing it.
Different missions create different situations,
Purge,
which I think is what they do.
Yeah, if you don't have Purge, then every army is incentivized to run hyper MSU scoring nonsense because there's no downside to it. Yeah. So I'm always a big fan of having like those random missions that, like there was Sites of Power, well, the one which encourages you to have characters. Yeah, I really like that one as well because it encourages like different army builds, and you can't just like run one thing and run over all the missions, which I really like. But yeah, I would for primary I'd like to have a bit more variability, and secondary is just whack them all in the bin because they anger me. It probably doesn't need to be that bad, but just do it because it angers me.
Excellent.
Sorry, that was a Jack rant. I apologize.
That's cool. Yeah, you're not allowed another one of those in the yay section, please, Jack. The yay section will definitely struggle for.
That was my nay. I've used up my nay.
I get it. Okay, that's all right. I'll accept.
I was using up my nay for that.
I didn't. I think the thing is that the flavor of the faction specific secondaries and the way it was linked to like the theme of an army was really cool. Like I liked stuff like Herd the Prey. It was nice to get points for steering your opponent around quarters of the board, but it was also bonkers because you just had very dangerous murder things, and they didn't want to come near you anyway. So there were just a lot of combinations there that didn't feel good at the time, I think. And then what else? Have we got any more in the comments? No, I think. Yeah, there's definitely potential, but I think they ended up being used as a sort of balance lever, which I think a few people in here are definitely saying. And Jack says, Death Guard hate tactical. He finds it so rough. Please give us a 3-inch deep strike. I understand, Jack. Maybe Death Guard will get a 3-inch deep strike. Cool. I'm going to bring it back round for another yay point. I'm going to go to the Capitans. Shine some light, Capitan. What's the yay point on?
I'm going for a minor little point here. I quite like the fact that they went for higher toughness on vehicles.
Yeah, that's
I've
a good one.
always one of my favorite gaming experiences was the Burning of Prospero box game, which is like obviously Thousand Sons versus the Custodies and Sister of Silence, and that uses D6, D8, and D10, and it's just a really enjoyable game. And obviously, we play on this set D6 dice game, but actually, just by changing some of the profiles, such as in this case the strengths and toughnesses of weapons, it just helps to, like in my mind, you've got these in the year 40,000, you've got these vehicles. They realistically shouldn't be getting chipped away by las guns, right?
Yeah.
And so just having like these statistical changes and that sort of thing, I think it's just enabled them to have a bit more design flex and design space with kind of the wounding and the hitting and that sort of thing. And I think I would like to see in future editions them actually take that on board. Like, we aren't that stupid. We can handle bigger numbers, guys. So
Yeah.
why not let us try and deal with this a bit more?
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to move away from just D6 and have D8s and D10s, but that's a different conversation. But I think just having that extra toughness, I think just added a bit more design space, and I like that change. It's the first time I've experienced something like that before.
Yeah.
Because I only played in 8th. I think it might have. There was various other things in like before 8th, but since 8th, it's been relatively the same. So it's, for me, this was quite a nice departure.
Chris, do you think if they went to a D12 system, we could remove rerolls? Because you do get that flex.
Imagine the world. Yeah, I think, I mean, it obviously completely changes the game, and it'd be a whole different balancing act. The more, I mean, it's going to get a lot harder, I think. But I would be up for trying it, or even them just doing it more in their specialist games and seeing the kind of the feedback they get from it. Obviously, I get that they never will do, because it's simplified, not simple, and it's D6s and everyone has them, and that's just what Warhammer 40k is and whatever. I know it won't happen, but so I'm always going to be up for anything where they try and change the profiles and push it out in a bigger way to enable that kind of aspect. So
Yeah.
I like that.
I like that scale as well, and I think it's made Primarchs and Land Raiders and Big Demons, all sorts of things, very relevant, right? And they have a role, because they no longer just get hosed down by the basic guns of an army that stood in front of them, which means they can't really function. So I think it definitely adds more granularity to the weapons you take and the solutions you apply, which is quite fun. Rob, you want to come in?
Yeah. I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with me. The support that we're getting from GW.
Okay, nice.
I think it's absolutely brilliant. I know they started the edition not very well.
That was for mine as well.
But their reaction has been outstanding, to be honest. I think 3 monthly updates, sometimes a little bit longer. At the start of the edition, they released extra emergency updates. They're doing these MetaWatch shows, which admittedly don't quite show the full picture, but it shows that they're fully engaged with the community and trying to do their best, really.
Yeah, I completely agree.
They've brought on Josh Roberts, who knows his stuff inside and out, and I'm really excited to see what the next data slate's coming from with him involved as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I've spent a significant chunk of the edition playing stuff that has essentially been brought back to life by the changes, right? So Votann, Drukhari, both factions, which have been completely reinvigorated by one balance pass in both cases, which is a remarkable position to be in, I think, where I say certainly in 8th and for good chunks of 9th, if your army just came out and wasn't at it, it stayed that way for a very long time, right? And so the points changes are very regular. Actual ambitious rules change has been very regular. Again, Death Guard getting a juice up, all sorts of interesting things like that. So it also means that the overall game meta has changed constantly. We think about a lot of the ups and downs in that. It's been interesting to talk about and analyze. There's not just been once we got the sort of initial start to bed, but that's for the Nay section. We'll get to that a bit later. Yeah, I agree. I think it does feel well supported, and they're at least very active and checking in very consistently with it. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, wonderful. And then Jack, do you want another yay point, sir?
I'm struggling now because you guys took like 3 of mine in a row.
It was always a risk.
Yeah.
Do you want another one? Do you
I
want to talk
was
about the app?
I mean,
No, that's my next one.
no, I don't. My problem with the app is no. I'm not going to say that. I'm not
No.
going
Wasn't
to. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to go there. One thing I do really like is I like how the army special rules work out.
Yes. Yeah.
I know we had army special rules before, but they all seemed a bit like fragmented. They're a bit all over the place. But I do like there's some of them that are so flavorful and work so well. Like the Death Guard one is fantastic.
Mhm.
I really like the Tau one.
Yeah.
I think but there's they're not all perfect, right? They're not all perfect. GSC is very questionable.
Yeah. There's a few that they basically had to go, oh whoops, and then like roll back on, right?
Yeah. It's I think a lot of what Games Workshop tried to do, I feel like in this edition is standardize everything, which is fine. There's an admirable goal, like with the way they do detachments and stuff. And then some factions are better suited to this setup, this framework that they've done than others. But I think as a general rule, I think most of the army rules are quite enjoyable and quite fun.
Yes.
Like the Thousand Suns is obviously incredibly like complicated, but it's very very flavorful. I was watching Davey play World Eaters at the weekend at the RTT, and I was just thinking like watching his army. I'm like, wow, they all get like this blood tithe ability. Like every unit like just gets it, and it's just really interesting how that can affect a bunch of different units in different ways based on how like what the base unit is if they're all getting the same buff. I just thought that was really interesting. So yeah, obviously, like the overall army special rule is quite nice. I like that. I quite like those.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think they managed to sort of streamline it a bit, so it wasn't quite as labyrinthine as some of the previous editions, or particularly 9th. But also, it still gave over a bit of what that faction's about and how that feels, right? And obviously, they do need to keep adjusting it. But yeah, I think it's in quite a nice spot. Is it me for EA now, or Rob? You've had 2, right?
I've had 2, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. So I'm going to go for one which is so far release balance of codices. Now, I think everyone's aware some codices have landed more exciting to people than others, but so far we haven't had the game world-ending grenade dropped on us by a book that just defines the entire game. Now, I say we were well into Drukhari land by this time in 9th, so it absolutely happened way quicker and way worse in 9th edition. And I think that whilst there's a bit of a disparity between some of the books, and that's going to be worth talking about, we haven't had just complete meta defined by the releases, which when you combo that with the updates that Rob's talking about, means that the meta has stayed interesting for armies without books as much as it has for ones with them, which actually typically in GW release cycles with stuff like this, your index stuff disappears very quickly and it's all about books for 2 years. But actually we haven't had that, and we're a good chunk of the way into the edition now, and it's nice that indexes are still getting juiced up and can still hang even as books come up. And so far we haven't had a book completely end everything. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
We are so close. You just reminded me, we're so close to getting digital rules. Because Drukhari got a new detachment. Right?
Yeah, it's happening, right?
Essentially. And then we're looking at Emperor's Children potentially getting an index, like possibly years after indexes are done, like a long time. Well, I'm guessing they're getting an index when the Chaos book comes out, but it's another one that's going to get added in. I thought, that's pretty close to. We're so close to getting digital rules. I can almost taste it.
Yeah, I do enjoy the indexes coming as patches, and I guess obviously Emperor's Children will be the next one of those, I imagine, unless they're bringing that on like as a little attachment inside the CSM book somewhere. I don't know what their plan for that is, but I imagine that will be another DLC. So that is nice, and it does make it a lot snappier and quicker. I'm going to return to the chat briefly. Oh, sorry, were you coming in there, Jack?
I was just going to say, just to cap off your point, I do really enjoy the sort of rolling 3-month meta we seem to get.
Yeah,
it keeps things sort of moving roughly, and I appreciate that. Nothing's like completely destroying the game for too long, unless you have pointy ears, in which case you get to. But
Yeah, indeed. But
You get the right kind of point,
it
yes.
sure is good for content creation to have the game constantly
It
being
definitely
updated
is,
and
yeah.
changed, and it makes it way more interesting for the player as well. As I say, I think we had one or two books very dominant for the best part of a year in ninth in this equivalent era, and that's not anything like as exciting. I'm going to return to the chat, then we'll see if we have any more yay points, and then we'll move it along. So Jack likes the succinctness of the new army rules, no more Angels of Death, which is actually 8 tiny rules shoved on top. It was always a bit much. Yeah, but I think certainly it was the rules layers, in particularly 9th edition. There were just too many different sources of rules and combinations that made it all very, very difficult to keep any kind of control on. Entropic Tyranny says 10th is a vehicle edition. I can see your point. I think for a lot of armies, it is a vehicle edition. There is certainly vehicles out and about. They definitely have more of a role here than they did in 9th. 9th was all about infantry almost all the time. That was very much a big, big part of the edition. What else we got? Positivity about the balance updates and less mortal wounds, says Entropic Tyranny. And I think that's probably generally true now that Dev Wounds has been adjusted. I think that's
no psychic phase, right?
Yeah, no psychic phase, which someone else was saying they missed the psychic phase. I also missed the psychic phase. I do think psychic armies just having an extra gun lacks a little bit for some of the flavor and the feel. Obviously, Thousand Suns do get a really cool rule set with that, but I think Grey Knights suffer for a little bit in terms of what they can do. And Rick Radu likes that there's only 6 strats per detachment. So 8, could we have 8? I wouldn't mind 8. I think 8 would be fine. It would be lovely. 6 is very, very few, is what I find.
It's a weird one, right? Because
yeah,
especially if you have something like Armor of Contempt, which is going to take up one of your slots every time, it can feel a bit limiting. And then if you have like a couple of crap ones, like the Retaliation card is a good one of this. It's got 2 absolutely cracking strats, and then 4 just like total junk ones that you're just probably never going to use.
Yeah.
So that sucks. But then the other end of that is, again, when I was looking back at the old 9th edition codex, there's like 36 stratagems, and like half of them are just datasheet abilities that you have to pay CP for.
Yes.
Like Breach and Clear, like it's a strat that only breachers can use. It should just be a breacher ability.
Yeah.
So
and that's one area where they've just made the units have that specific role, and it's less tied into resource management.
Considering we have so many stratagems where it's essentially just repeats of each other in different detachments. Like how many strats do we have that are just lone operative for a unit, or you kill a unit in the fight phase and then everything within 6 stages of battle shock? Like there's lots of duplicates of those. I think maybe we could do you could do like 2 which are faction specific, and then all your detachments get it, and then like you could have 6 which are
that's actually a really good shout. I like that one. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, because you could have Armor of Contempt as your one at the top there, and I don't know, maybe one to like move your Oath of Moment target or something.
Yeah.
Or Tau could have their Fire and Fade as their unique one, and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think that's right. And I do like. I've certainly had it a few times now where it's like you're playing into something you've not played before, and you genuinely can do the homework on that very quickly. That's a nice thing. Like I literally got the app. I can look at the enhancements of the strats. I know what the sort of tricks are, and it's nice and quick and easy to do. And it is also very quick and easy to introduce someone. Like explaining what Sky Splinter did does not take very long when you can just have the page of here's the tricks. This is what it's going to do. It's very quick and easy. So I think there's something in that and in the ease and speed of play that's definitely true. Rick says he plays Grey Knights and he does not miss the psychic phase at all. Well, there you go. That's awesome.
I don't miss it either. We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, my Drakari don't miss it either. Smite was not our friend. Okay, very nice. So, any more yay points, lads, before we move this along?
OC. The introduction of OC.
I like OC. That's a good call. Yeah.
You know what wasn't good in 9th was when I had 1 Cabalite alive and it walked onto a point and stole an objective off a knight.
Yes. Yeah, that was silly.
That was so silly. I think I've got a photo somewhere of an Urgle standing looking up at a knight who cost 15 points. He just walked forward and went, "That's my point now." I wasn't sure about it when it first got released, but it's a really good change, and I think it's also helped balance out these SKU lists. So you see the tank heavy meta. What do you do to stop tank heavy meta? You take OC and move blocks. Yeah, it's another good balancing exercise, I think, or balance change.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right, and I think it's nice. Again, different vehicles or sort of mid-range cryptids having different amounts adds a bit of a puzzle to things. I think that's really fun, and it does. It has helped. So, if someone said it was a vehicle meta earlier on, I think it's correct that it has definitely helped to put vehicles and monsters in a more relevant place when tussling over objectives. Whereas, as Rob would say, and again, me and Rob are very naughty doing this. This was the life we would lead. But I throw my 45 idiots on a point. They have the magic shoes, so you can't hold it. And now they've kind of added more of a counterweight to that. So I think that's really cool. Cool. Any other yay points, gentlemen?
Someone mentioned it in the chat, but I think the app is certainly in a reasonable place.
Mhm.
It's not perfect. Like, let me duplicate a list. Like, come on. But at the same time, I use that over Battlescribe now. I use, it's easy to build. You've got all the stuff there in front of you. There's obviously going to be more and more issues as more and more codexes come out, and if you haven't bought them and you don't have the code, you're not going to be able to access the rules. Whereas at the moment, I can access most of the rules for most of the factions I'm playing into. But I think aesthetically it's pleasing. I think it does a lot of things right. So I think that's a positive step in the right direction. Hopefully in like a year or two, Jack alluded to with the digital copies, like you can see the potential there of a world we live in where you've got your iPad and you've got your scoring app for the game and then you've got your Battleforge or whatever, and just everything's there and it's really easy to access. And
it's so strange how we had this like perfect example of how good a full digital rule set could be, and then it's just slowly getting worse over time. Like once all the codex is out, the app's going to be like almost useless, right?
Didn't they do this in 9th though? They started off the app as being locked by codes, then they opened up data sheets but not abilities or something like that.
I don't know the ins and outs.
They did do a little bit of a
rings a bell.
They reduced the paywall, so I wouldn't put it past them doing that just to get buy-in on the app again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Another yay from me is I really like characters leading units. I think that's fun. I think that's neat. I like having a character with their sort of correct type of unit. I like 2 units with 2 characters going in and then hitting each other. That's just fun. I've got a lot of time for that. The sort of lone op I have a slightly more love-hate relationship with, but I think it's nice that there are lone ops that kind of allow for certain kinds of lone ranger characters to exist. But I do enjoy this kind of take character to really soup up a unit. Different combinations of characters bring out different things in a unit. I think that's probably where for some armies a bit more of the kind of tech and fun and brain puzzling when you're designing lists is. Typically, most of the armies I play don't have a big enough unit range for me to really access said tech. But I imagine for Space Marines, there's a hell of a lot going on, and I would hope that CSM have similar in terms of just having a bit of diversity in where you plug characters in and what that gives you.
Yeah, sod lookouts there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tropic Tyranny says, looking back now, Lookouts was terrible. Yeah, it was very silly, wasn't it? It was very, very silly. I mean, Jack's obviously in the chat, but Death Guard, all the leader plugins in Death Guard are really fun. You don't know, obviously, again, if you're min-maxing, you don't want to use all of them, but you can do all sorts with that, and it's a lot of fun plugging different things into Death Shroud or Blight Lords or Blood Marines. Okay, wonderful, cool. Any more yay points before we move it along into the Nay Town? Okay, let's do this. Let's go. Get your negative hats on. We're going to a negative place. We're going to talk. We've said the positives. Now we're going to do constructive criticism. And I'm going to let Chris kick us off. Chris, what's a nay point here, man?
Okay, I'm going to go for a fairly obvious one here. Taking away our ability to pay for war gear. The list building is just so much more monotonous now. It's simple.
I just don't do it. I don't do it now.
Yeah, it's just... Yeah, like there's just, again, I was talking about how I liked the vehicle extra toughness gives that design space and gives you that flexibility in terms of pointing things correctly and giving agency to players at building lists, and adds that skill set, and you can make those tiny little tweaks and those little adjustments, and I've got 15, 20 points left over, like what can I do with that, rather than I've got to remove this unit and have something there. So yeah, I mean, it's pointless harping on about it. Really, I haven't met many people who have said, "Oh yeah, I really like having the having that removed." Like for me, it's just a really, like there's a reason why no one played power level, right?
Yes.
In 9th edition, because it was shit, and this is shit. It's as simple as that.
It is power level. They've just
Yeah,
they
exactly.
said, oh, you didn't want to play it. Okay,
Well, we're
tell
gonna
you
make
have to.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
So,
some reason, on some levels, I get it, right? Because if you're like, if you put your lore hat on, and you're an Imperial Guard
no.
commander, and you're looking at putting together a invasion force or whatever, you're not going to say, well, I'm just going to take 7 guardsmen from that squad and leave the other 3 back at base. Like, that's just a bit weird. It doesn't kind of make sense. But the stuff where it really annoys me is like a bolt gun and a melter gun are not the same.
They're not.
We,
10 melter pistols and 10 bolt pistols is also not the same.
yeah. Demolition charges and an auto gun pistol or whatever it is not the same thing. Cyclic ion blasters and burst cannons are not the same thing, but they're all pointed the same way. So it's. Do
we think great. Maybe? Because I honestly I feel like where I like it is on your basic infantry, where it's like it's nice to when you have a box of your idiot Cabalites or Space Marines, have them have all the good stuff and not be sweating about it, because it's nice to build them with all the interesting stuff. And I wonder if maybe you should bring that granularity back for your elites and your big tanks and your monsters and all the things where there's actually genuinely big differences in terms of the output there.
I think with a lot of these, it's all going to end up a bit of one and some of the other, right? Because there's good points about is paying 5 points for every stubber on your Leman Russ or Rogaldorn fun. Not really. Like, does anyone want to faff around with that? Is anyone going to actually ever do that? No. But is it
maybe just for particular main guns? Oh, it's tricky. Yeah.
I think it's more of a necessary evil for certain units that have a lot of flexibility in what they can do.
So what have they done with crisis suits? That's their solution, to make it 3 separate data sheets. Which in itself creates other problems.
I don't like it. I would rather it was the way it used to be, and it was pointed, rather than the way it is now.
Someone in chat did mention the fixed unit sizes as well, and I do find that a pain for certain things, especially as a transports person. It's just very annoying trying to play transports with fixed unit sizes. It's a massive pain in the arse. It makes life extremely complicated at times. So that's one where, again, it feels like, there's every other game you can have more granularity in that sense, pretty much, and it doesn't really. I don't know how much time that's really saved anybody in the grand scheme of things.
I'm sure it's saved the people that make the game a lot of time.
To let them build a nice app.
It has probably essential for them building an app, right? So yeah, maybe that's what it is. Jack, do you want to take a nay point, my man?
Let's not start out with something deep and philosophical. Let's just talk about terrain rules and fly. Because that is just the worst shit ever. And I fully know that I don't like it because I am a Tau player and my entire army is now vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And where I used to be able to go through walls, I cannot. And I have lost something, I've lost a part of myself, it feels like sometimes. But it's just so miserable having to measure around all these buildings with these fly units. And it's just... or worse, having to measure over the terrain with a fly unit. That is just because a lot of the time it is slightly better. But if it's like the 4-inch tall ruins on UKTC, it's slightly better to go over the ruin. And measuring it is just the worst, because everyone always thinks you're cheating when you do it, right? But even though you try, it's like, I've measured this in a way that's like, I probably could get another inch here if I measured it properly, but I can't be bothered, so I'm just going to take an inch of movement off myself.
Sure.
But then they're like, wow, that seems very far. And it's like, I promise it's not. It's just like, just let me go through the walls. They can fly. This, just let them go through. It's just really upsetting. I just don't know why a crisis suit can't go through a wall when a Terminator can. It upsets me on a primal level. Yeah, there's certain for me it's just fly is annoying in particular. It's the one that just trying to measure it all and going around stuff is just annoying. I would rather just let me go through stuff. Over stuff.
Yeah.
Having just played a game with Harlequins, it's bullshit.
It's fundamentally changed how I think all of our chosen factions play.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Yeah, I don't know. I think I thought it would bother me more than it has with Jukari. They still feel quicker than everything I play against, and that suggests that if it was the old way, I'd be even quicker than most things I play against. And I don't know how good that is. And I think certainly coming out of the end of an edition where we were getting face punted by Harlequins over and over and over again through walls, it's like there are downsides to having that amount of freedom, but I guess it's all about what you link it to in terms of the lethality and power of different units.
I don't think Harlequins have any less movement than they do now, right?
They have.
They could bring the whole army 16 inches through everything in front of them and shoot you with Melter.
It
was all just because the boats could just go through the entire. Like you were getting alphaed brutally with that a lot of the time.
Do you think this is a bit of a skewed view from us because we play in the UK? Playing on GW, this isn't an issue.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
there is a terrain type dimension, isn't there? Yeah, the GW stuff handles it a bit better, but UKTC doesn't handle the fly particularly great.
No.
Jack says RIP Hellions. Yeah, gone but never forgotten Hellions. Cool. Okay. Do I have a nay point that hasn't been said? Oh yeah, I'm just going to say. So the launch state of this game was an embarrassment, a fucking embarrassment, and it basically killed my joy and excitement for this game for several months. And I think that was true of a whole bunch of different players and a whole bunch of people in our team. And that's the start of a game. That's an embarrassment. That's a moment that should be exciting. Everyone getting their army rules at once, that should be super, super fun and interesting and cool. Could have been a massive moment of celebration and content. And instead, no one wanted to go and talk about the game at all. We were all sort of in a position of not really sure how to go and do content for 2 months because the game itself was such an embarrassment. So I'm not going to forgive that anytime soon. I think what's come since has demonstrated that it can be way better, but that's just not all right, allowing it to land in the state that it did.
Especially because it was 10th, right? Like 10th, it's number 10. That's an exciting big number.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even that big a fanfare. It wasn't this is the 10th edition, this is the best one yet, blah, blah, blah. It was like, cool, so just so you know, a new edition's coming out, and it's going to be a bit simpler, guys. And that was just like the build up to it, and there wasn't this big, exciting moment, which I would have anticipated. Personally.
Yeah, I think like one Warcom article about your army in the lead up is a bit. You can just do so much more than that. You can have, I think they've got to play to their audience a bit more, don't they? And whip us up a bit with, videos and faction specific stuff and a whole bunch of stuff, and then. Again, just without even getting into the fact that, a bunch of the indexes were good and a bunch of them weren't. And it was just really brutal in terms of the levels and the play testing it felt had gone into some of these things. That's just not good enough, I don't think. They'll have to do better for the start of the next edition. Because with 9th, it at least started kind of fine. And then it unravels after that. But maybe that's where you need to have overlap and continuity. Sharuni says, people still think 10th sucks based on launch alone without any understanding of what has been fixed. Yeah, I'm sure that absolutely is the case. I would encounter people like that with 9th, where the sort of low points of 9th burned a few people and then they didn't want to come back. And then you're playing this very enjoyable game and you're like, no one, it's too late. There's people who won't be sort of called back in. So that's what these big damaging moments in a game's meta can do, right? And I feel like 10th starting with one of those was a pretty rubbish place to be.
First impressions count, right?
Yeah, exactly that. And it's just as far as indexes like Eldar and GSC goes, like what was wrong with that is blatantly obvious. Blatantly obvious. It takes literally 2 minutes of reading through those rules to understand that. So there's just no excuse.
One, right? There's so many things in 10th edition where it's like, oh, it looks like they thought that through. Or it looks like they thought that could be good.
Yeah.
So many things like that. And there's some other things that's like, did you read this for like just once? Like,
yeah.
Like this Wraith Knight will delete this entire Terminator unit without rolling. Like, you know what I mean?
That's it. That's the thing. All this loving thought going into like keywords and universal special rules and X, Y, Z, and then you're like, also, I just delete you from behind a wall with this D-cannon. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't even need to see you, and I don't have to roll any dice. You just
also,
dead.
It's in your turn. It's in your turn. I forgot.
In your turn.
I missed that part. And it's so that as I say, that was I think now that like all traumatic experiences, having got through it and recovered, it's funny. But let's not forget that was terrible. That was absolutely terrible. Absolutely
When
terrible.
you say it now, it's
yeah, it takes you back, right? Do you remember
Yeah.
that? Do you go back
Yeah.
into summer. I tried a Blood Angels list out against Ed. The entire list was dead in about 2 turns, and you're like, "This isn't very fun." I'm not
I
loving
remember
it.
watching Ed play the Wraith Knight into Paul's like Terminators and something. He just like opened up, and Paul's just like, "What? You can just see them; they're all dead." Like someone, it was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Yes, those are the rules.
Completely bonkers. Yeah, towering. That's another one where it's just like, oh, don't fully understand that at all. But someone got it through, so there we are.
They're there now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all getting there, and it's just it didn't feel nice. I think because we'd lived through a lot of beta testing, what it felt like in 9th, to feel like a few of the basic lessons of that got thrown away immediately. And we're like,
Indirect.
we'd better relearn all of that again at the cost of game experience for thousands of people for months and months and months. And you're like, there are basic lessons about what makes a good game that you should be carrying forwards, and you've not done it. And whether that's because of sales or whether that's because they're idiots or both, I don't know. But it was that was frustrating knowing that we were back at the start of the climb. Cool. Any other nade points, gentlemen?
Changes to fight phase.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
Go
I
on.
like that one.
So, first caveat, I understand why they've done it because I think they've tried to reduce the gap between higher skill players and your average player. It's much easier to do, but I feel like the fight phase back in 9th was it was somewhere where you could really give your skill expression, and you could make these situations that you could get this extra movement, you could tag things, you could jump around, and it was more of a puzzle. It wasn't I throw brick at wall and it either breaks the wall or the brick bounces. It's
how much more fun does that puzzle get when you add OC, by the way?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can you imagine how that would have been?
One jerk onto
different
different
OC shit swiveling around each other, like the combo on top of it changing like 3 times. It would have been very, very fun, actually. I think in a whole bunch of ways.
Yeah, very much miss the old fight phase and the bullshit you could do.
Yeah. There is still nonsense in this one, right? Like the sort of the move blocking of yourself and other things. We had a couple of I was playing Ed the other night, and even in that, I don't even know how to play the fight phase, but even in that, there were a couple of interactions where like that doesn't feel great. Like that, it just feels sort of
so
gamey.
Complicated when you actually try and do smart things now, where before it was,
Completely.
oh, I rolled well and I can move where I want to. But
yeah.
No, it's like, oh, I rolled well. Bollocks.
Why did you open?
Pickleax says losing actions is a perfect example of a 9th edition learning being forgotten. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They fundamentally exist. They fundamentally exist. There are cards that involve them, but the language of actions is like the guy that wrote actions is no longer working for them and didn't leave them like a post-it with actions is pretty cool. Here's how you do them. Call them actions.
You know what's good for a universal special rule?
Like
actions.
Unbelievable. Like that. So yeah, there's a few fundamentals like that.
I genuinely can't work out what their angle is there. Like you had this new thing in 9th which actually worked well, actions.
Yeah.
And then they removed it to have a 3-sentence paragraph to explain
that amounts to an action. Yeah.
Why? I don't understand what possible logic they were trying to follow there. I can't see it.
And it's allowed for stuff like, fire and fading stuff doing actions like later on. There's all sorts of silly combinations that have come out of it as well. That it's like if you just kept your basic kit of ideas from actions in 9th, I think it would have worked great. Cool. Okay, any other nay points, gentlemen?
I think something that really annoys me when I'm looking at the sort of overall game is when all the indexes came out, I think this is kind of like leading on from our last point, and now kind of slowly as the codexes are coming out, there's kind of a big gap between haves and have-nots.
Yeah.
I think in the codexes in general. So there's some factions where it feels like they get sort of everything they need, right? They have a detachment that has every possible archetype of stratagem that is good, and then there'll be other detachments with just yeah, like what do? They don't really do anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the Imperial Knights detachment, like what do those strats do? Like I think there's one that gives you like +1 AP. Like I don't know what the rest of them do. Oh, there's the 4+ invul one. Sure,
Yeah.
why not? Whereas then you look at Canoptek Corps.
Yeah.
You've got a reactive move, which should be a universal special rule. You've got loan up for a unit, which should be a universal special rule, really. You've got the regenerating units if they get charged. You've got a enhancement for infiltrate. You've got a devastating wounds stratagem. You got everything you could possibly need. Similar for a lot of the orc ones. A lot of the orc detachments, you got a bunch of stuff. You got virile hits. You got increase your movement. You've got defensive stratagems, all this sort of stuff. And then there's other factions that just don't have that, and it's just really strange how some. And I think if you take it in a microcosm, the Custodes versus Orc release situation is kind of like takes the extremes of this situation and puts it all together. The Orc Codex is great. Why is the Custodes Codex so shit? Like,
yeah.
I don't understand why the difference in it needs to be so severe, right? And it just I don't get it. Like it's like you say before, like I just don't understand the logic of like why they need to be such a different, not even just like power level, but it seems like a level of care. Like
for sure.
Like, it doesn't seem like the Custodes book just doesn't even seem fun to play, right? It doesn't seem enjoyable. Like your units don't feel strong in comparison to the other people's units. And there's lots of detachments that do this in the game. It's not just Custodes, but
totally.
It's just really strange to me how some factions just seem to languish, and I don't know why.
I think we've had it the whole way through. Right? I think we had it at the index stage, where again some of those indexes felt very unloved, others felt way more interesting and dynamic, and then we've had it with the books as they've come out. And we've had a couple of books where, as you say, it's just that I can't think of a time when the fan bases of factions, as their books come out, are literally just dropping them. I don't know if that's partly just the circles I now move in 10th edition versus the circles I would have moved in 8th edition, but I can't imagine a situation where people are getting the rule set for their army and just going, I'm going to go do something else, because it's that uninteresting compared to some of the other stuff out there, or that kind of undercooked. And that's not a great situation to be in.
People are at the point now where they don't want a codex.
Yeah,
they're they're
doing a reverse dance all the way back in.
Saying I hope you get your codex soon is like a curse on people, right? Like you don't want your codex because it's not going to be better.
Yeah, then you've got something like Orcs, which just highlights that it can be this absolute shot in the arm as well. So it's interesting. I think it's a slight consequence of the balance thing I already alluded to. I think books not just landing buck wild and flattening everyone is probably a good thing, but it does feel like, unless it feels like they can do that, it's nothing as exciting for people. And maybe people quite like to get that big shot in the arm and have a big juiced up book when it comes out.
Maybe
cool. Any other nay points, guys?
Can we go back to the indirect changes we had at the end of 9th?
Yes, that was what I was going to mention as well. They already solved it, and they just made a worse version of it.
Yeah, so that's another lesson that just could easily have been carried over that wasn't, right? But Night Spinner's got to get sold, so there we are. That's the world. Wonderful, cool. Unless anyone else has any other nay points, I might take it to the questions. You got one more? Sure, you go.
One last quick one. Enhancements are shitting compared to Warlord traits and relics. I think.
I agree, but I think Warlord trait relic detachment combo was one of the big endless problems they were having in 9th. So I think this is why they've been more careful with enhancements. And we haven't had game breaking enhancements, really, have we? I think there was a couple of things with Storm of Fire, but I can't really think of anything else that has been oh god, this combo is so awful, everyone was talking about it. Whereas with 9th, those Warlord trait relic combos that you had were driving people completely bonkers.
Was it 3 different succubus builds that would just blend anything?
Yeah, well, there was one that had infinite attacks for a while. Don't forget that was.
Building characters like that is
it's part of the fun, isn't it?
Yeah,
I agree. I totally agree, and I think
there were Tau commanders, right? You had one with the Honor Gauntlet with Precision of the Hunter, so you always hit some wins. He was fun. and there was one where you could get it increases movement. There was like a relic increases movement, but also he could, if he ever got charged, he got to move 12 inches, so that made him really fast. Or there was like a strength 6 no invulnerable save, ignoring wound cap burst cannon. These sorts of things that were like quite fun that you could take. There's very few like weapon enhancements, and the ones that there are just generally kind of naff. And there aren't too many that are good. But yeah, so I really miss that, like being able to create cool characters that could do
I loved it.
I want to have a character that will kill monsters. I want to have a character that will kill infantry, and it's that sort of thing. Which I get. The game is like generally moved away from Hero Hammer.
I loved it. I loved it as well. But I think it was just it was one of a whole list of things that people were complaining very loudly about by the end of ninth, and I think those combination players are really nice. But I think leaders plugging into units and buffing them still feels really nice. But it would be nice to also be able to put a juice on those characters and have them, go and do something special with their sword. I'm a big fan of that. Okay, wonderful, cool. Well, that's us running through some of our basic yays and nays for 10th. If you think of more things, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. We'll endeavour to have a look and feedback on them. But also, if you have questions, we're going into the podcast questions section of the show now. So feel free to shoot a question in. You could super chats as well if you're feeling really, really thankful for our time. I'm going to pick some questions out of the Discord, and I'm going to start with this one. So, what are your thoughts on the disparity in numbers of detachments for release codices? For example, Marines getting 7 plus chapter-specific ones, whilst others only got 4. That's from Bloodrender. What do you think about this, Jack?
I was sat here thinking, I've talked a whole lot on this podcast, and I really wanted to not talk over people for these questions. I want to leave these guys to get their opinions out there.
That one's for you, though.
That question comes out.
Yeah. You got to wait on it, so go for it.
In theory, it can be fine, right? But this is the have and have-nots thing, right? Why does Tau only have 4 and Orcs have 6? Is it?
Orcs have 6, yeah.
Yeah, Orcs have 6, and Custodians have 4 again.
I think Custodians have 4.
It's and one of those are the index detachments. Which okay, well, we've already played with that for a while, so we're getting 3. And Tau's situation, one of them was the Kroot detachment, which is fine. I mean, it's not great, but it's like if you like Kroot, then you're fine. But I'm not a massive fan of Kroot. Which leaves me with the 2 new ones, which is Montcar and Retaliation. And I think Retaliation's a bit naff by virtue of I don't think the battlesuits are very good. So it kind of just leaves me with 2, which just isn't very interesting because you get. Whereas I look at it like Tyranid book's fine because it's got 5.
I think Tyranid has a whole bunch of ways to play. Yeah.
Again, I don't know why they don't all just have the same number. I guess I kind of know they just struggle to think of some, but think harder.
Yeah, I do. I feel like 5 at least would probably have been nice, and it does show that they've struggled to think up interesting ways to recode and reprogram smaller sets of models or smaller sets of units. I guess in that sense, they haven't been able to come up with interesting ways.
Back to what we said before, right? Certain factions are more suited to the detachment setup, right?
Yeah.
Like Orcs and Space Marines just fit it really well because of the way that their lore is set up. But Tau less so, right? So
there's sort of really big ranges with different like subsections looming out in them. Yeah, definitely.
It's just, I guess there's some of my thoughts. I'm just disappointed. I'm just disappointed.
For sure. Cool. All right. Our next question. Titchy asks, have they succeeded in simplified, not simple? Have they avoided the dreaded power creep so far? Those are 2 different questions, I think. Let's start with simplified, not simple. Have they achieved that? Is it simplified?
In some ways.
Yeah, I would say it definitely is. As a casual game, it's much, much easier to play.
They've created so many issues, right? Like you think about the endless FAQs, and we're still having discussions about area denial. Like that's one of the it's ridiculous. And they've it's always been an issue with them, but there's so many potential problems that we're constantly having discussions about still, and that that if your rules are simplified, then that in theory shouldn't be happening. But they seem like they've produced that FAQ thing in like January, was it, where it just covered so many of the little things that people were like kind of like discussing and not sure on. And if you've done a proper good job on your rules, that shouldn't be the case, in my opinion.
For sure. Cool. And then, I mean, avoiding power creep so far, I think the way that they balance now means that power creep just isn't going to work in the sort of linear way we're used to. I think there was a sort of muscle memory in us where we're like, oh, well, as each book comes out, it'll be the best, so I should just get ready for that. And people line themselves up with different books that are about to come out or different changes. But actually, the way they adjust and balance things and the way books are coming out isn't giving that predictability. So there's still power in balance. But I don't think it's anything like as predictable as just being repeatedly hit in the face with the newest release, which is what 9th very much was.
You take something like the Grey Knights, like no one would have seen a very simple change of an extra pip of AP and no cover on one gun.
Yeah,
and suddenly
that does it. That opens
and suddenly we've got 3 Redeemers, 5, 6 Dread Knights, which people are like, oh, this is a brutalist, blah blah blah. Like that's out of nowhere with such a minor and very clever change. So I think that's positive.
Yeah, I think there's some smart hands managing things in terms of the balance. So I say 40k is always an imbalanced game. If you're playing it competitive, that's literally what people play it for half the time. They want to find a scary thing and juice it, but exactly where you're getting that from is more complicated now than just the latest release, and I prefer it that way, I think. So then we have Pickalex's question is brutal. The Paluse's mission is to create the most cursed imbalanced edition ever by taking the most wacky and janky rules from prior editions. What would that look like?
Well, wasn't 7th edition you had like a re-rollable 2-up invulnerables or something? Right?
Yeah.
So
and invisibility they used to have as well.
Yeah, I never played 7th, but from what I've heard, it was insane. So
I think from the sounds of it, I think you would just bring 7th back, because I think that was the most nonsense edition of the game ever. Listening to people talk about it sounds like it was completely mad. I don't think there's anything from our
maybe like those little Harley rules of like, oh, you can't shoot me unless you're within 12.
Oh yeah,
re-rolls and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Really.
So 7th edition with the Harlequins rules on top.
I think invisibility was 7th, right?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. All of the no rerolls or trans hitman or transhuman stuff from 9, just shove that into 7th edition, and I think that feels like something everyone would hate.
The last edition I played before 9th was 5th, and like the worst things I can think of. I remember when I was looking at that game back then, and the things that we saw that were like super overpowered, and we're like, "Whoa, that's so good!" Was like long fans can split fire. Oh,
everybody loses their minds.
Oh, so it's changed a lot.
Yeah, very good. And then we have. Oh, Andrew asked, could you touch on 5 units that are must for an Orcs 2K list? Just trying to narrow down the models. Thanks in advance. So, the issue with the Orcs book, speaking as someone who is just starting to collect Orcs, is that this is not a book for people who are just starting to collect Orcs. Like this is a book. This is a book for people who have 10,000 points of Orcs all ready to go, because you could play Orcs in a whole range of different ways right now. I think if you're thinking about, well, what's good in a bunch of those, Mega Knobs look really good no matter where you plug them. So that's really good. I think Trucks, Storm Boys, still really, really useful no matter where you put them. I think Gazgul, probably really useful no matter where you put him. And regular then boys. Yeah, regular boys. I think those are the sort of core, and then it's about the flavor of, where you go in Squigs, are you going Death Copters, are you going Killer Cans, all sorts of different stuff on top of that. But yeah, it's a really good one for guys with tons of Orcs in their garage. That's what it's for, and I think it does that really well. So next up we have Jack Asher asking, what's your favorite character with Warlord trait, Relic Enhancement, Leader combo from your time playing? Go on, Rob.
Ginblade and Hatred Eternal Archon, who just cut anything in half. It was amazing.
He was so good. I loved him.
Mini Drazza.
The problem was Draz. Draz also liked Hatred Eternal, but yeah, that guy was great. I'll go Triptych Witch Succubus because she was also amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and just pop a Lehman Russ. Do I like? It's fine. Good times. How about you, Chris?
Oh god. The Custodes Shield Captain on bike, who had like
Oh yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that guy.
it's
What
like
about Mr. Worldwide? He was fun as
this
well. The guy.
Worldwide was still fun, but not quite as tank as it was like the Shield Captains. It was extra wounds and like I can't even remember what
You
it
had
was
feel
now.
no pain, damage
And feel no,
reduction.
yeah, it was like 9 wounds and a 5 up, feel no pain. And then just had like reroll ones to hit and wound and stuff. Like that was there wasn't really anything for Necrons when I played them. Admech, obviously, it was just all the characters were just like buffing characters, and you had like 5 of them, so there wasn't one specific super character.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Shield Captain on bike, man, I remember one time just leaving him on an objective, just like wide out in the open, the only one on a no man's land objective, and as I sent forward all my other bikes, and his guard player was like, "Well, just kill that Shield Captain," and he did not kill that Shield Captain, and like, the entire army just fired into this guy, and I was like, "Yeah, what a hero, what a lad."
Yeah, there was a Night Lord's Demon Prince that was also very good, where he just had a big damage 3 sword, and if he hit, he wounded you. Basically, was the gist. He was awesome. I had a good time with him. I'm going to read out a comment from Ivarden Sphere, just saying there's a 9th edition list building felt like I was playing with Lego. 10th edition list building feels like I'm playing with Duplo. Still like the game, but I miss the depth and granularity. I don't think anyone would dispute you on that. I think they were kind of very clear that that's likely to be how this was going to feel. It is how it feels. I think the optimism I would have is that we're probably at the start of a 2-edition spiral a la 8th edition in that sense. And you'd imagine we've really got like a sustained 4 or 5 years of it getting more complicated and interesting from here. So that's where I'm going to put my hope. And we'll hope that that's the case. And in the meantime, people can enjoy playing with Duplo because it turns out they wanted to do that. Cool. All right. And then we have Hannibal asks, what was/is the best edition of 40k?
I've played 8th, 9th, and 10th.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just there's too many things in this edition. It's just been dumbed down, and they took away the things I enjoyed. So I guess I would go. But I remember feeling similar in 9th. I remember being like, "Oh, you've taken away some of the things I really enjoyed."
Yeah.
Like even stuff like fall back and shoot with fly, which was an 8th thing, which suited the styles of this I was playing. So but from this, you're always going to look back with rose tinted glasses. You're not like thinking back to like when I first started playing 8th, and it was like random lengths of games. Like you would get to turn 5.
Yeah.
And
I think
roll.
8th had tons of weird shit with it.
And it's so weird to think that you could have that sort of thing. So I guess I'd probably go 9th because it's a halfway house of some of the weirdest stuff. But I really like the fight, as Rob said earlier. I really like the fight phase and the combat phase and all the charge phase and all those tricks, and that it just felt like no choice for you, and that felt sad for me. So
yeah.
9th.
I'd say 9th as well, but I am open to 10th stealing that position. It's not impossible at this stage. I think if we get through the whole thing and fun, interesting things have happened and it hasn't been dominated by 60 plus win rate armies for most of the edition, then maybe it'll have a case, but we'll see. Okie dokie. Then we have one last one from Paint Celestine. Do you think the judgment on the Custodes Codex is fair, or do you think it's a bit of a preemptive reaction?
It still slaps so hard.
Custodes have never got rules and not bitched and moaned for months when they got them. They have always done this. They will always do this. It is always how it goes. In this case, it does look particularly harsh. Is the output increase good? Is that going to put them in? Like, I think it's just, I don't know.
I think it's that have not, right? Like a lot of their stuff is limited in random arbitrary ways that just make them less fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're use strats for 0 CP but once per game. Why? Why is it like that? Why is it different to everyone else's? Why is it much worse? There's a lot of stuff like that it can just be like a worse version of other people's rules. And I'm a big believer in that datasheet abilities are considerably more important than points when it comes to balancing stuff. And like the play experience in general. So I think a lot of people read those datasheet abilities regardless of points and will be disappointed in what they see, which I think is totally understandable because the datasheet abilities are ultimately they're the ones that affect how you play the game, not points.
Yeah.
So I totally understand it, and most of the time when the top players in this game and any war game really look at something, they can probably tell like, is it good or not? They can probably tell if it's immediately going to be like one end of the spectrum or not, just from experience. And yeah, prognosis has not been good on the Custodes book, so
You
I
take
think that's
Art of
probably
War, right?
justified.
When it came out in 9th edition, they play tested it for one weekend and immediately were like, this is the most broken thing ever. We will take it into LVO at the last moment. And this time they're bombing it, right? So yeah, exactly as you say. I haven't personally, but I like their thing has always been in 10th. They're the best. They're like the anti-combat army. Right?
Yeah, they are. They had the fight phase on lock, basically.
Do they still have that? Because that was their thing.
No,
so if they've lost that, that's not great. And then the other thing was the durability. And have they still got that level of durability that they had before?
To an extent, I think they probably do. I think they probably are still very durable. I think their output is still very good. I think it's losing a method of fight phase control that was so easy and so obvious.
Have they lost fight first?
They have essentially, yeah, fight first, and they had the two sources before, so they could have double fights first. Now they can't, and that's a big loss to how they have been playing. Whether or not there's a way around it, and maybe it involves more vehicles with Custodes in them. Our own Aaron has been testing things to that effect.
Yes, he has.
Yes, he has. Maybe actually because now your Custodian can't just stand behind a wall and win every fight. Now he just has to actually connect on his terms, and you just need to find ways to achieve that. So it might be if they can do that, and they certainly have vehicles that enable them to do that. And if they're cheap enough, actually there's still very much a game there, but we have to see what the points are.
Is this something, though, that Custodes are taking a bullet for the health of the game? Because they have, how long has 10th been around? Almost a year now, a bit over a year.
Yeah.
They have locked out combat armies from playing the game.
Yeah.
You couldn't bring combat armies because you would just lose if you hit Custodes at an event.
Yeah. I think that's probably the issue that they found, and I think they're one of a few armies that have been in the crosshairs since their release for being a bit too good in several different ways, right? So have probably had adjustment.
I'm interested to see if someone can do something with them, because they're not just relying on one trick now, and I do hope people can find the next stage of them.
It's not we can be very like doomy and gloomy about it, but it's all relative, right? In the sense that we can look at it and say, well, that's probably not going to get a podium place at a GT, but there's going to be a build in there you can play and do fine and go like 3-2, and then you're not going to just like get trashed every game.
Yeah,
it's not going to be that bad.
No, of course. I never say just because John Lennon doesn't think he can win a super major with it doesn't mean you can't win games with it. Those are two very different ends of the spectrum, right? In terms of, but it's going to be interesting to see. And again, consensus in this game is sometimes all powerful. So if people just jump off it before they even start.
If you like combat, you can just play Blood Angel, Sons of Sanguinius instead, because they kicked Custodes' arse anyway. So
yeah, exactly, and they probably still do. Wonderful. Okay, right. Well, that is us for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please do hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Please do leave us a comment if there's any additional thoughts that you have. Do consider sort of signing up to be a member and supporting us that way. We appreciate it massively. And we will be back again next time, where I believe we are going to talk about what we're going to talk about. Oh, we're going to talk about the social scene in 40k, how to win friends and table people out there on the event circuit. Bring you some life lessons and some fun anecdotes from that. So we'll see you all again